Hi, I'm Jennifer Woosley Saylor. I'm a licensed professional clinical counselor and the kid of a cop. And this is the podcast When the Call Hits Home.
Hey everyone, it's Ashley Gethner. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and I'm also a child of a police officer.
Welcome back to the podcast. I'm Jennifer.
And I'm Ashley.
Welcome, welcome. It is just Ashley and I today. Why is it just us today? Because schedules are crazy and all our other guests we've booked out. So it's just us today.
That's so true. We do have guests lined up, but we both have been working real hard these last few weeks. I can't even believe we are in April at all.
Oh, I'm not okay with that. I need it to be like March 35th. Like that would be good with me if we could have just a couple more days in March before it's April.
You know what we need to do? We need to do like the Ellen show and like we need some people who will just fill in for us sometimes. Like, can you just on the podcast? Like, can you just actually do this for us? Because
Um,
we are drowning.
Actually, I guess it will be me and the guest host because I have nothing better to do. I'm here for this podcast.
Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. But
Um,
we are excited because we were talking this morning, kind of collecting our thoughts, and wow, guys, like we are literally well, it's been a year. It's been
it
one
has
year
been a
since we
year,
started when the call hits home.
which is wild. We were talking about that beforehand, and this was just a little seed of an idea. I think Ashley, you and I talked about a book. Like that's where this
Yeah,
started.
it did.
Thank
Ooh,
God I didn't have to write a book.
what was
Uh,
I thinking?
Probably you were thinking I just finished a PhD and I had to read all these books. I want to get some payback for like having to read my book now.
Oh,
So I can't believe that this like little seed has approached to a little sapling now in terms of it being a year for us. And we were just talking about like what do we want to talk about today? And I'll speak for myself, Ashley. I got pretty flooded. Like we could talk about this, we could talk about that, we could talk about this, we could talk about that. And so we just wanted to come on and talk about all the things. But I think I first want to say is we want to talk about what you guys want us to talk about. That's definitely what we're here for. We're here for you, the listeners. I mean, Ashley and I can just talk all day. We just don't have to record it. So
right.
this really is about what you guys want to hear from us. And one of the things that people have reached out about is kind of peer support is one of the things.
Mhm.
Ashley and I have talked about after Bree's episode, just talking more about postpartum and what happens when we invite a baby into our homes and our lives. That's something we've talked about financial wellness for first responders and the importance of this. Are you guys hearing the spectrum of things that we're like trying?
Correct. Yeah. I've also gotten such a slew of like retirement. Hey,
Yes.
what about our retired officers and firefighters and, first responders? And I'm like, yeah, that's so true. I mean, both of our dads are retired, so we do have that, but I think we are just skimming the surface. Like it's been a year, and yet there is just so much out there that we still need to discuss and circle back to, right? Like these
Mhm.
conversations, they don't just end after one time.
No, not at all. I think that, again, what's most recent right now is Bree's episode and talking about what that's like to be a new mom, which was so generous of her to come on and share that and the impact of that in being a first responders family. And so I'm just like, oh, we need to talk more about that for sure.
Yeah, and Bree's episode, man, we just have to thank her real quick again because we got so many messages, just so many people reaching out. She did incredible. I think she just opened that book for a lot of people to be like, "Oh my goodness, yeah, I need to talk about this or I need to hear this. I feel validated that someone else is feeling the things that I feel too." And so I am just extremely grateful for that.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm appreciative to all our guests, that's for sure. And people that are volunteering and wanting to be on episodes, and people that, I mean, they're giving the most valuable thing, which is time for us to talk about some pretty serious things at times as well. So, yeah.
Absolutely. But yeah, let's circle back. Let's start with the peer support stuff because
Okay.
oh my gosh, I feel like my S's are so bad today. I'm sorry, everybody. Dang Invisalign.
I think you notice more than anybody else, Ashley, but
Holy moly,
continue.
I'm sitting here like, oh boy. we did get a few messages about peer support and our thoughts on peer support. And I think that we have to be mindful because we're not like we're
Exactly.
clinicians, right? So
Yeah,
like I want to put that out there. We are not peer support isn't necessarily our bread and butter. I will say that it is something that I am most recently really diving into and having this incredible opportunity to look at different policies that have been created and different things that are being implemented throughout different departments. And everyone does it a little bit differently. I am a fan of peer support. That's a
oh,
question. Are we
absolutely.
fans of it? Of course I am, because as clinicians, we know that the number one thing we can do after a traumatic event, right, to help the brain start to process is to talk. And that's
Hmm.
not always with us. I always say in my trainings, like, look to the person next to you and just start a conversation, and you're
Hmm.
helping yourself. So I do know that peer support is incredibly important, but I also recognize that with that comes a lot of hurdles and challenges for these departments. So Jennifer,
Absolutely.
I don't know if you can speak a little bit about like your perspective on peer support, or maybe even take it back a little bit. I think I jumped ahead of what peer support looks like sometimes for people in
Yeah.
departments.
Well, I appreciate what you're saying because the most important thing and something I always let any client that, unless I have a therapist that's a client, is that I have no clue what it's like to do your job. And that is very true of first responders. I do not know what it's like to be a dispatcher, a police officer, a firefighter, a paramedic. Like, I have no background in that. And I think the peer piece is that when you get to talk to people who know the job, I think that that is the peer part. I was at a meeting with firefighters and they're talking about the truck. And man, that thing is awesome. And I have no clue. And like they're explaining it to me. And yeah, you have two firefighters together and they have their own shorthand and know that language. And so I think that's the important part of peer support is just somebody that knows what it's like. I think, and I wish we maybe had a little bit of a family therapist here to talk about systems and family systems and you know in departments in firehouses and dispatch rooms, there are dynamics that show up, and sometimes those dynamics can really impact a peer support team. And so unfortunately I'm talking about a negative impact where there's somebody there that maybe didn't show up as a peer with the best support,
Yep.
or they showed up as a peer only representing the agency and not representing maybe what is in the best needs. And I want to give credit to the peers because that's a fine line to walk, right? Like you have to think about the whole at times and not just think about the individual. And so I think those are some hurdles or some hangups that can happen with peer support. And so I think the most important thing in this is, where do you feel like you can trust somebody?
Yeah, I was just about to say.
Okay, you go with that then.
Well, well, because, right, like, and I don't mean we will make sure to spin this because there's so many beautiful positives too, but there is truth to that. I think what I see mostly or what I hear in my office or even just the trainings that I do and talking to other first responders is like trust is huge, and yet
Mhm.
there's such distrust within departments sometimes
Yeah.
that people are like, no way am I going to go talk to somebody that I know and give them everything because then the rumor mill is going to start or they're going to break confidentiality and they are going to say everything I told them and people are really skeptical of that. However, right, like that is where we need to push as clinicians for these departments to make sure that they are doing everything they can for a strong peer support team because that
Right.
shouldn't happen.
Well, and I think that again, to definitely promote you in your business, but I think, this partnership with a mental health professional and a peer system or peer support system is so ideal because again, to have the training about the importance of confidentiality. How do we active listen? How do we do these things and approach in a way that's non-judgmental or advice giving or, those things, and support that peer system to offer that to people that are struggling and building that trust. I think that that's a great kind of thing. And obviously, that's a very biased opinion to say, oh, a mental health professional along with a peer support team would be great. And I don't even think it has to necessarily be that, but I think that's a good example of how that can be really healthy. And y'all, this is just from the perspective of hearing about
Yeah.
unfortunate events that happen with peer teams. This is not us coming for peer teams at
No.
all. They're a beautiful grassroots, organic way to support your team. It's just we want to make sure that those are healthy places.
Yeah. So I am gonna give a little bit of a plug here. And again, I don't know everything. I work in the state of Wisconsin, and so every state kind of does things differently. One thing that I will say is that I have been blessed to work with departments, one in particular who has done a phenomenal job of building a strong peer support team. Like I look to them and I'm like, man, like, but it took them a long time to get there.
Mhm.
And not only that, they are very, very strict with it. And so in this world that I run in Wisconsin, right? Like in order to have a peer support team be effective, they do require a mental health professional to be there. So I think a lot of people have heard of like SISM training,
Mhm.
right? When we run our debriefs and you have to get trained in that, like you have to have a mental health professional for that. And that's for a reason, right? We have you guys like peer support. There's a fine line between being someone's peer and being someone's therapist. And that line can get blurred really, really quick. And that's why we encourage, obviously, a lot of departments, if they can, to find that mental health professional to help with this.
Mhm.
Because you don't want to cross that line, nor should you, because you
Right.
are a peer, and that's the purpose of it,
Yeah.
right? And so it is so important to not only that, but like vet your therapists, interview
Well,
them.
yes.
Like, I got interrogated when I
Yeah.
tell you that I got three people in my office at one time shooting questions off at me to see if I was good enough to be a therapist for these police departments around here. That's what happened, right? And every single time someone new discovers me, they send a few of their people to come do the same thing, and I love it. But vet your therapist. But yeah, I do think like in order to have that successful like broad spectrum, if you want something huge, you have to network and you have to make those connections because it is hard to manage, I think, like peer support on its own without being like, okay, now where do I send these people for resources if it gets
Yeah.
that,
Right. Right.
right?
Absolutely. And I think that, it's this kind of triage level as well
Yes,
too, and knowing the difference of that. There is somebody that is just going through some growing pains with their career or having just a little bit of a stressful situation at home, they can go speak to a peer and like done and dusted, like things are good. And then there's other times where it's a crisis,
yeah,
and sadly it's a crisis like they need to go to a hospital and because they're not safe. Like
right.
I mean, there's this level of need, and all of those things need different supports and different level of escalations and things like that.
Yeah. I can also speak to a little bit, and again, it's not saying this is correct or wrong or whatever, it's just what I've seen working well, would be that the departments that are really dedicated to peer support, right? Like they have a wellness coordinator who is an officer, somebody who is there and that's their sole job though. Like they have literally designated a role. And I know that's not possible for everywhere, but
Of
they
course.
designate this role of a wellness coordinator who plans all these things, right? Like that person's kind of they're the head like peer support person. They get everything in line. They help with policies and trainings and all these things and they just solely focus on that. And to me that's so heartwarming because what does it send? It sends a message to all your people that like we really are trying here. Like we really are trying to give you something, right? Like we really want your mental health and your physical, financial, right? Like wellness programs almost like to be a priority in this department. But I do think that when I've seen departments have like not have that, and there's always like that one or two or three people working together to try to create something beautiful, which, oh my goodness, we need them, right? But
Yeah.
when they have that job on top of all their other responsibilities, it is so hard to get it
Mhm.
up and running.
It is. It takes a lot of work and it has to be, a labor of love, that's for sure, to support, which is, that to me is this podcast for sure. But when those wellness coordinators reach out to me, to other, therapists, it's great because I think their job too is sometimes like, let me do a little bit of the legwork. So
Hmm.
we're not kind of going back to our previous episode, Ashley, when we were talking about therapists and trying to find the right therapist. Some of their job is trying to vet what hopefully would be a good fit for somebody that they know they can refer to. And so that is good when they're doing that legwork or creating those lists of like, hey, these are, professionals that we would encourage people to see.
Yeah. And I think too, and we are going to have a really special episode coming soon, but I
Ooh, I'm
think
excited.
I know. Did you see like I wish they could see our we will do
Uh,
videos soon. I think it's warranted, especially with some really amazing people coming our way, but as soon as I said that I had like my little smile
uh,
like
uh,
because I'm just so pumped.
Tickets are booked. Yep.
Yes.
Mhm.
But I definitely like, and again, not trying to go negative with it, but I think something important to discuss too is like in terms of peer support, how much are our higher ups included in this discussion?
I think that's a good point.
Oh, it's a hard point because I get it on their end, but on a different level, like when there is way too much involvement, again, I think the people within the departments are then more hesitant and suspicious and nervous about their information being shared to people of higher rank and what that
Yeah.
can look like. And I'm just gonna put it out there and people can judge me. I don't care. But like I don't believe there should be much, if any. There are times when it's necessary, but that's very few and far between that higher ups are involved with peer support.
And I think that, yeah, I definitely agree with that for sure. And I feel like the only place that would be it would be a safety concern. Yeah. And what's happening in people's relationships or what's happening with people's attitudes. I mean, those aren't things that bosses need to, like, that's not a safety
Exactly.
concern. It's not a
Exactly.
safety concern at all. Yeah, so I hear what you're saying with that. And that and I don't think that this is just it's clearly unique to first responders. I mean, I saw that hugely in the military about and they're not citizens, like those are soldiers and hierarchs are going to know everything, and yet we want to help people and like how do you navigate that? And it can be extremely hard. But I think it's this whole idea too, and what you know, I I hope us having these conversations is also just about that empowerment of what you can do for yourself. Yes, go talk to your support team, but no, that's not the only place. We're telling you there's other places that you can find support and navigate some of these things. And again, like I don't know what it's like to be a first responder, but there are a lot of things that, like I just learned more about a fire truck. So like there are some things that I can talk about, or an engine, excuse me. See, I mean, I'm not even saying it right. So like I'm learning. So, but no, I think that there are places. I also think that I don't know about you, but again, circling back to what we were talking about with therapists, I do think we're seeing more and more people that are having second careers in the mental health field that were former law enforcement, former firefighters, former paramedics.
Right.
They are kind of heeding that call for their brothers and sisters. Hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Just met somebody this week actually. Told me actually two people. Yeah, that told me they're currently law enforcement and they told me that they are now back in school to become a mental health professional. And I just think that's so beautiful, right? And there
Hmm.
is so much to say that like turning to somebody who gets it is so much easier and it just feels better. And I mean even for us, right?
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
turning to another therapist and being like, "Oh my goodness,
Yeah.
I had a really rough day," and for that person to be like, "I get it,
Yeah.
right? I've been there." It
Yeah. Those are when we're not recording the podcast. Those are the things we're talking. Yes, those are the conversations.
Don't let all my secrets out.
Never, never, ever. Well, I feel like we could definitely focus some on peer support. Are there other things in terms of just this getting to be me and you and that you wanted to talk about today?
Yeah, I think something that we haven't touched on that we want to do more of, and I'm going to hand it to you because you
Oh,
said it
shoot.
beautifully right before. Of course, we always say things very beautifully right before we
Yeah.
record. But then it's like recording in progress, and we're both like,
Mhm.
oh. But right is that we have had a lot of run-ins. I don't want to say a lot, but there are times where we have run-ins where financial concerns for first responders and their families are a pretty big deal. And I don't know that we have enough support for our first responders in terms of finances and what that looks like and maybe why we do see a lot of our first responders struggle financially.
Yeah, well, I definitely am not the financial expert by any means, but I think this is also what we're looking forward to in terms of as we continue in another year with when the call
Hmm.
hits home is to talk more with experts in this field. I do see, and I think, we all see financial struggles. And I think that that gets more and more and trying to navigate, just having financial freedom, but to manage when you have a family and your income and what that looks like can be really hard. Sometimes something I see and something I saw in my home, growing up, I'll speak specifically for a police officer's home. You get your salary and then you have off duty, and off duty can really supplement
Yeah.
your salary in a really a positive way, if it can be a positive thing. And then from the aspect of a family piece, though, well, this is kind of what we were talking about before hitting record, is just like sometimes that police officer is working so much off duty to provide that then the family, it can really kind of create a divide, the family. And so trying to explore that and what that looks like and trying to find balance in that. And again, the intention is good. Like I'm making more money. Like we have, baseball, travel baseball we have to pay for this summer. Like, of course I have to get these extra hours in and to provide. And yet sometimes we have to look at things from like a holistic perspective or a whole perspective of saying like, well, what do I gain financially but give up
Yeah.
connectatively with my family? And so just trying to manage that and explore that. And I come back to like, we want to know, is that something you guys want to hear about? Like,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, and I think we're hopefully everyone's catching on at this point to realize we're kind of celebrating that 1 year mark and giving you a little bit of what's to come. But I do want to share from, I love that you brought up your own personal experience because I think that I'm sitting here listening to you and my wheels were turning because
I
so
thought you were just spacing out, like I was boring.
no, I kind of
Okay.
wish I would have had a little bit of a break. No, I'm just kidding. But so my parents got divorced when I don't know, I think I was 15, 16 at the time. I was in high school. And there's obviously a lot that goes into that, but at one point it was just me and my dad. So I lived at home with my dad and I I will just never forget those last few years of his like career because he always worked his ass off to make the money for us girls and to provide for our family. But now that I reflect on that as I'm, 31 and in my own adult life, like I he had to do everything because so he had the home, like my mom had moved out
Mhm.
and things like that. And in that moment, like I barely saw him because I mean he was pulling every single extra shift he could
Right.
because he's trying to pay for the divorce, he was trying to pay for the house, he was trying to pay for us girls still in different ways. We were a little older, but still I had sports, I had, everything that I had and I mean every little event. Now, nobody judge here. We listen, we don't judge. Isn't that the on one hand, like now I'm looking back, I'm like, oh my gosh. So he would like literally worked so much, and sometimes he would stay out in that area because he lived like 45 minutes from
Mm.
where he worked.
Right,
It would
right.
just be me at home, and I would be at home like throwing parties. Because that
Ashley.
what? What? I'm innocent, I swear.
Right.
And stuff like that, and because he was just not home. Like it was just me at home.
Yeah.
But on the other hand of that, I think that when I look back on that too, like that's where me and my dad grew super close because I respected that he was working so hard, and I would try my best between everything I was doing, work, school, sports, like to help
Parties.
to like,
Hmm.
well, those were in there. And um, girl, yeah,
That we
I,
need to stop recording if
we
you're
need to
gonna start
stop
talking.
recording. No, yeah, I don't know if any other, I'm just going to put it out here. This is what this is about. I like saw old photos the other day, and like me and my friends would literally take my dad's work shirts and use them as Halloween costumes. And the other day I was like, "Oh my gosh, what were we thinking?" Like, but it was easy. I was a police officer for Halloween then. I didn't have to
Every
go get a
year.
costume
Yeah,
every year.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Anyway, back on track. But I swear, some child of first responders gonna be like, "Yeah, I did that too."
yeah.
I mean, he worked really hard, and so on the interim, like I would do things too. Like he would make grocery lists. Sometimes they made no sense. They would be like hot dogs, chocolate chips, a bag of chocolate. I'm like, what? Why do we need this? But I would go grocery shopping, right?
Uh,
I would cut the grass, and I would do whatever I could to help him. And we really just kind of figured it out together. And like, I mean, it's on one hand, when I look at that, I'm like, man, it was sad. On the other hand,
yeah.
and I'm like, him and I just did it. We just figured it
Right.
out together and we just did it. And that's probably a big reason. I don't share it often. I don't know that I've really shared that much with anybody. That him and I are so close now is because I feel like at one point we just looked at each other and we were like, we're a team. Like we got to
Yeah. You
figure it
and me
out.
against the world. Yeah.
But that
Yeah.
financial pressure that he was under at that time, like I can't even begin to understand. And I don't know that I want to. But I think
Hmm.
his story resonates with a lot of first responders, right? I think
Oh,
I hear that a lot,
absolutely.
like child support, lawyers. Not only that, but sometimes some of these men and women get on the job so young, and all of a sudden
Mhm.
you're getting some nice money, looks like nice money when you're young, right? And so
Yeah.
that we don't ever learn like those things might come down the line and we need to save. So we start spending that money because we have it.
Or if you work off duty and don't take your taxes out, and then what the IRS will come and get. Yeah. I mean, I've crazy stories about that too. And again, you're young. Like I didn't understand. I still don't understand taxes and they're coming up. But you know
Mhm.
what I mean? Like I they that's something you have to navigate with all this. And again, I'm not a financial expert. I'm not here to kind of tell you guys what to do or who to invest in by any means. But I think just to say, like, hey, this is an added layer, an added stressor that can really happen for first responders and how to manage all of those things.
Yeah, and I think that we have a cool person maybe coming on to help us discuss that a little bit more in detail. And
Yeah.
I do think it's needed, right? Like we need to talk about it, we need to discuss it, we need to give them resources. And I
Oh,
am not the
absolutely.
person for that. I'm not
Yeah.
the best with that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah. And I think also too, like what works for your family. I mean,
Yeah.
you kind of have to manage that and that takes that deeper work. Like, listen, there is a spender and a saver in my family, and I wish I was the saver. But with that being said, like there's good in both of those things. You know, if there's two savers, there's no fun. And if there's two spenders, there's no money. And so trying to find that balance. And, you know, I grew up in a home where there was a lot of tension around money,
Yeah.
and that can really impact, you know, how we feel about it. And
Yeah.
so those are all like deeper questions that you have to answer, which goes back to Jeremy's episode and talking about like that ability to kind of look in the mirror and sit with yourself about, hey, what's there that's bothering you? So I think that that's something I hope that the podcast is always encouraging. Like, hey, just take some time to think about you and reflect on those experiences that you've had.
And I would encourage our listeners to do that now, right? Hey,
Hmm.
look it, we are opening this book to let you know that we do have some things coming to help you guys, like hopefully, right? Some resources or some information. Take that moment after this episode and think about that, right? Like,
Do you know that they say, I don't know if you've heard this before, I mean, this is like a psychology thing, that your belief about finances is pretty solid by the age of 7. So
mm,
what you believe about money,
yeah,
and you think about that from, that's not a 7-year-old is in finance. That's a 7-year-old that lives in a family and how they spend money. You know, if it is a wealthy home, it flows. If it is a paycheck to paycheck home, it's something that we have to be scared around. Like, and for me, it was just money always causes fights. That is my
yep,
belief. If we talk
that
about
was us
money,
too.
there's going to be a fight. And like I had to work through some of that stuff. And this episode, we're definitely oversharing. Like my
We are
husband and I
not.
have definitely had fights over money. I mean, I think that
Yeah,
that's what happens. And I'm very fortunate in that, have done some work on that and been able to make it on the other side of those like
yeah,
hard, tension-driven conversations. I feel like we're much more on the same page. I hope he would say the same thing. I think he would. I think he would. But golly, we're all over the place today.
No,
I'm
I
looking at
love
my
it
notes. I'm
though,
like,
because you're
peer
like, we're
support,
oversharing.
money.
I'm like, we're not though, because I feel like this is what we need to do to connect, right? Like,
Mhm.
we've never even talked about these things together. And so, like, I can connect with you on that level big time. Like,
Right.
I'm such an anxious, scared human over money. It is not even funny. And that does come from my childhood. Like, it absolutely does. But also on the interim, like, the other hand of that, right? Like, maybe that's why I work so hard in life. And that's because
Hmm.
that's all I saw was in order to make that money, in order to get what you want, in order to be who you want to be, like you got to work hard. Like that work ethic comes into play. And yeah, maybe sometimes I overdo it, right? I don't stop. We all know that. But to me, that's like a huge reason why. Like I have to keep it coming because yeah, like I'm scared, anxious over finances for sure.
Yeah. I definitely understand that and appreciate that. And, owning your own business is its own other financial
Oh
thing. Yeah,
my.
yeah, yeah. Well, we won't get into that.
You won't.
But I hear that. And what it comes back to, and this is definitely my thesis statement from, this year of podcasting, is that first responder kids like find a way. Like we take something and we put it to action. So you saying like, oh, I work hard because I know that's what it takes in order to have some financial security. So I think that's great.
Absolutely. And I know we're definitely approaching our time frame, but I do want to say as we kind of transition that we have not forgotten about our retired first responders.
Yes, yes, that
And
was on
we
the
have
list.
some very cool things in our pocket for that as well. And I'm excited to share a little bit about our next guest who will who will be a retired officer and some of the really beautiful things that he is now doing after retirement. And I think it'll be kind of fun. And I think it taps into both the retirement part of things that we're talking about now, but also the financial things that we just spoke about. So I'm excited. I'm like very excited to have this opportunity to like show what a retired officer is doing in terms of kind of financial stability and just, I guess, fun.
Yeah. Well, and I think it goes back to our previous episode with Catherine, like that, your life doesn't stop with retirement and you have to have a plan. So, yeah, I agree with that completely. I am excited for, yeah, upcoming guests and especially I think these episodes where we get to offer bang for your buck, you
Yeah.
get two for the price of one. So,
Mhm. Absolutely. Well, I am, again, 1 year of this is a blessing. I'm
it
so
is.
excited. I can't wait to see where the next year takes us now that we do have kind of a little bit more of ourselves, like our feet under ourselves, right? In terms of all of this. I think we have a lot
Yeah.
coming, a lot more connections being made, which is just beautiful.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's really just an honor. I say that all the time, but it's true.
Well, I did have a funny story I wanted to tell before we wrap
Do
up.
it.
Since you're mentioning uniforms, and it kind of does have something
Oh,
to do with
oh,
retirement. So
please.
I remember my dad retiring and him having just a pile. I mean, a pile. This is, like 30-year career, a pile of uniform shirts. And he was like going through every one of them. And he had, so his department switched names. It was, Louisville Police Department, and it changed to Louisville Metro Police Department. So he had two different patches, and like sitting through and like taking out those patches. And of course, I was a snot-nosed adolescent. I'm like, why are you doing that? Like, why are you taking all this time to do, like, just put them in the Goodwill pile? And he was like, Jennifer, they can impersonate a police officer. And I was like, oh, sorry. Like, I didn't even think about that. Like, but
Oh,
like that's something you have to
yeah.
protect. And I appreciate that he took, and that was not helping him. Like, he didn't have enough scissors. He had to do it
And
himself.
enough scissors. Yeah.
But I remember I felt kind of dumb. I was like, oh, I
You
didn't realize
never,
that.
did you ever wear your dad's like police shirt for
I
Halloween?
don't think so. I don't know if I'll be able to find it, but my brother definitely, and my dad had like the old, it was a pretty bad jacket, like old school leather. Like he wasn't ever a motorcycle, but it was kind of like a motorcycle leather. And I remember
Love
my
it.
brother wore that as a costume one year and stuff. But yeah, I
I
had
love
no
it.
interest in being a police officer for costumes. I'm covered.
I was like, I'll just do it.
Yeah.
Uh,
No, it's smart. It's very budget friendly.
very
See, I'm
budget.
the spender. I want to go buy a new costume. Pay attention, Ashley.
Oh,
Um, no, I'm just teasing. I just wanted to tell that silly
I love
story,
that.
but
No, absolutely love it.
I do think in coming up on this anniversary of a year, I just want to thank our listeners. Like, we're here because of y'all. So thank you guys so much for giving us of your time. We appreciate you. Love all of the interactions online and posts. Let us know what you want to hear more about. And you
Yeah.
want to take us home, Ashley?
I'll take us home. I do agree. I think that if we can, if anything, take this moment after this podcast, give yourself what, 5 minutes, jot some thoughts down, some ideas down. Where are you at in life? And give us the feedback. We want to hear from you guys, what you guys keep the questions coming, keep things coming so that we can interact with you. But overall, you guys already know this, but it is my favorite to say that just never forget that when the call hits home, Jennifer and I are here for you, and we will see you guys next episode.
Thank you.